Good afternoon. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reed. Here's my co-host, Dave Bernstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello. I
Uh,
understand going down under for some news.
okay, yeah, there's the Down Under indeed. Down Under being Australia. We had talked a week or two ago about a proposed ban that the Australian government was looking at imposing on kids using social media. And in fact, they passed it just this past week on Friday. And it got a mixed reaction, but it's one of the few bans that is an outright ban, David. It doesn't permit the kids with their parents' permission to go on social media. It's an outright ban of kids under 16, an absolute ban from kids under 16 to go on social media.
Doing that.
So, come back? What's that?
Why do you think they are doing that?
Well, there's been a lot of kind of, I won't say fear, but a lot of talk about folks that are being, women that are being targeted, sexually abused online, young boys that are being manipulated online, and um, just risks to the physical and mental health of young people that the adults are saying the kids are not able to navigate in a safe way, and that the kids are vulnerable, and that they need this ban in order to protect them.
There-
That's the ostensible reason. That's what they're saying the reason is.
I think that's why they
Mhm.
believe that stuff. And there are a lot of people who believe in that. Do you think that's right? That social media is so negative for kids that they should be kept off it?
I not categorically, no. I would prefer that there be some way for parents to be forced to be somehow the gatekeepers. When we were kids, Dave, even going back many years, our parents controlled how much TV we could watch. We couldn't just sit down in front of the TV endlessly. We had to do our homework, we had to do our chores, we had to do eat our meals, and then we're allowed maybe a couple hours of TV per day, per night, per evening. And it was something that parents very consciously were aware of that TV viewing was not necessarily productive, and nor was it necessarily socially enhancing. So our parents control that. And so I would be in favor of getting parents involved in their kids' consumption of social media. I know that's very difficult because the kids are so much more adept at using social media than the parents are. And even if parents set up rules, kids could duck around them and manipulate around them. But nevertheless, I think that would be a noble something to shoot for, getting the parents involved in helping the kids navigate and work through social media. A lot of these harms and negative things that are coming at kids, if parents were talking to the kids, were participating with the kids in some of the stuff that could help the kids out. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. But as a parent myself, my kids are grown now, and they run circles around me in terms of use of social media. But nevertheless, I think it's instructive for the parents and the kids to be involved together in how they use social media, how they consume it, and how they react to it. So that would be the way that I would, if I were a legislator, I would shoot for that. And interestingly enough, they interviewed some folks, Dave, down in Australia after this law was passed, and many parents said, "Great, they're glad to see that happen." They talked to a number of young people, and they said, they were not happy with it, and they were going to find ways to work around it. they said, we'll sneak it and we'll figure out a way to work around it. And those kids probably will.
Those kids know enough about what they're doing. They're probably fine. Years ago, I was on a different radio show and we got a call in from somebody who was 15 years old
Mhm.
and wanted to get a computer job and thought he could find one. But he didn't see any way in his situation to get papers. And did I tell you the story before?
No, I have not heard this story. 15-year-old
I,
year old kid looking to work in the computer industry, but couldn't get his working papers.
I said, anybody who can't figure out how to generate something like a working paper probably shouldn't go into computers yet. And Joe King, who was the host of that show, really came down on me because that's suggesting illegal stuff. But there's a lot of illegal stuff going on.
So
Uh,
how
do
do we, can we legislate against that, Dave? Is this just political grandstanding, do you think? Some folks that are saying that this legislation in Australia is a model for other parts of the world. I know the UA in Europe has enacted some legislation similar. I think theirs is a participatory one where parents have to give the kids the right to use social media. I know there's a law that's being disputed in, I think it's Florida, that has proposed an outright ban on kids using social media. I think it's currently being challenged on the grounds of free speech in Florida. Is this something, is this an area where the law, where government has a responsible role?
And remembering what I was like as a kid, and it was really important to me to do what I wanted to do from about the age of 11. Uh, my sympathies are with the folks who say that, yes, there are certainly negative things that happen on social media, but on balance, they're good for the kids because they're connecting with the people.
Mhm.
Only connect. And that kind of connection is really hard for many people to make. The one that keeps coming out is queer students
Mhm.
or in a school, say, where there almost nobody else queer. And I use the word queer because although it was derogatory, it's a word that a lot of people use about themselves.
Mhm.
Like I use black instead of African American because Jenny says black. So I figure if that's what she says, I should go along. But uh, I'm getting old. I lost my train of thought
Yeah, well,
there.
I'm following you, Dave. I mean, folks are looking for their peer groups. And if you are kind of on the fringe or not mainstream in terms of how you think, how you dress, your sexual orientation or some other orientation, you can be an outcast, and that's especially true for young teens, where peer pressure is extraordinarily strong. So to be able to find a peer group and folks that maybe think like you or dress like you or behave like you online, that's got to be very empowering and strengthening for a young person to find folks that are like them. So I understand that, and I applaud that. I think that's a very positive use of social media, being able to find your peer group, your affinity group, if you will, and to be able to talk and communicate and grow together. I think that's very positive. How you regulate all the negative stuff that's going on. I really don't know. It seems to me that, the law in Australia is a real big swipe. I mean, it's such a broad stroke. I'm skeptical that it's going to really have the effect that's intended.
And I would have expected the majority of the Australian legislators would have been skeptical and would have been very hard to get this through.
Mhm.
But what's happening there, among other things, is that it's an easy thing for an adult to believe that the kids are going to follow everything up. The kids
Mhm.
will be wild. They will go after Officer Krupke and become juvenile delinquents. So, and they don't see both sides of it.
Mhm.
But another story from Australia.
Yeah, somewhat related, not related to the kids, but another effort for government to step in and help consumers as it regards to consumption of big technology. And Australia is proposed, I don't think they've yet passed, but they have a law on that they're proposing that would fine significant fine, something like 50 million Australian bucks, which is 33 million American dollars, to against global tech companies that suppressed competition and prevented consumers from switching between services. We've talked about this before on the show, and what the folks in Australia are saying is that the dominant platforms can charge higher costs, reduce choice, and use sneaky tricks to lock consumers into certain products.
Oh, they're not sneaky. They're very obvious tricks.
Okay. Well, the consumers may not understand them,
Yes,
obvious, but if you're not tech savvy, you might not get it.
they work.
Hmm.
That's why it's so important to folks like Facebook to be able to do almost anything they feel like, because they have slews of techniques which aren't hidden. They're discussed in the industry to make their service more addictive.
Yeah, yeah. There are some stunning statistics in this same story about the market share that some of these tech giants have, and I suspect it's not that much different in many other parts of the world. But in Australia, Google controls 93 to 95% of online searches, and Apple's App Store accounted for about 60% of app downloads, and Google Play the other 40%. So you got Google just totally controlling the search market. And then you got two players, one of whom is Google again, controlling the app downloads. And then Meta, Facebook's platform, and Instagram together supplied 79% of social media services in Australia. So you've got one, two, three companies that are really totally controlling what's going on in social media in Australia. And what this proposed legislation is trying to do, aims to do, is to make it to fine those big players as they make it harder for folks to switch to alternative providers. These guys, I don't know that $33 million is going to really impact Google or Facebook. I don't know if that's per incident or per user that complains. I guess if you had a big enough multiplier behind that, it can have an impact. Um, what do you think? I mean, is this? I think this has been tried in Europe. Can it work? I guess that's my question to you, Dave. Do you think this can work?
Have some data. The European Union has been going at competition or the lack of it
Mm.
in the tech sector and has fined Google and Facebook literally billions of dollars.
Mm.
That's enough. And they put in all the law that what are the penalties if they breach the competition law? Up to 5% of their global income.
Well, that's a big hit.
That's 5 and 10 and $15 billion
You
for the
start using that B word, it gets their attention.
no.
You don't think so?
I'm looking at about $4 billion of fines to Google that they basically have ignored and go on.
Cost of doing business, huh? I mean, what do they gross here? $100 billion or so, Dave? I mean, I
I
know
don't
it's
know more off the top of my head, but
yeah. It's a
The
lot.
Now the other thing that's come out is that India has just fined Facebook on competition $25 million
Mhm.
for what they didn't maintain that Facebook was breaching India's privacy laws. They maintained that in something where they had market power, where Facebook had market power,
Mhm.
if they make the rules that make it hard to switch, if they make rules that make it hard for people to compete, that prevents competitors and breaches the law in India,
Mhm.
competition law. Uh, and they did some. I mean, I know all the arguments on this in the United States, where we virtually don't have competition law, and we almost definitely don't have it with somebody big enough to lobby like that. You know, what kind of privacy law did the United States get through over about these big techs?
I'm
You
I'm I'm struggling to recall one, Dave. I'm struggling to recall one.
And that's the kind of power. There are a few interesting things, though, the difference between India and the US on this stuff.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people in the US who think that very rarely should any company be fined or limited by competition law. This comes from people like George Stigler at the University of Chicago, worked with Milton Friedman, had a Nobel Prize, and so on. Very good economist. I've read a lot of his work. Who said that actually there are other things that can limit the competition. Another thing that India is doing, and is doing right, and is obscured in the United States, antitrust on its face, and as it is applied around the world, except in the United States, is about having market power. That you're so big, you distort the market and distort competition, and you lose the benefits of competition. In the US, since the Reagan era, people have been claiming and thinking that only monopolies are affected by antitrust or organized cartels. And that's very different in because many things, there's a huge case going on now. Apple and Google both have a big share of the app market. Do they have market power?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you look at duopolies and the example we just talked about in Australia, where there are three companies that control everything. I mean, for my money, that's antitrust. It may not be a monopoly, but it's three giants controlling the whole game, and difficult, if not impossible, for another player to get in.
And it was only a $25 million fine, which they're going to ignore,
Yeah.
especially because they'll appeal and tie it up for 4 years.
Hmm.
Indian court system is on together about things like that as the American one is.
Hmm.
So a lot of people, uh, including Tim Wu, including every telecom lobbyist in Washington, and so on, have been saying they should be given a pass. In fact, Mike Powell, when he
They're saying
was,
that the tech giant should be given a pass day?
yeah,
Oh, wow.
or the phone giants or anything. And
Hmm.
there's a whole lot of technicalities in the law about what is the market. And when you want to stop it, you try to say the market is all kinds of things. Uh, they say that this was about WhatsApp, an online phone service that has 60% of the Indian market
Mm.
and is owned by Facebook. And in America, they'd make the argument, and a lot of judges have been accepting it, that, oh no, we also compete with the 3 phone companies in Australia, not just whoever else can get into our narrow market of online phone calls.
Mhm.
All of these are obvious to most people who believe in antitrust and believe in competition. Obviously, almost no large corporation in the United States believes in competition.
What's it's anti-American, isn't it? I mean, supposedly it is American competition, but in reality, big business, uh, one of the slogans that I heard one of my associates repeat from his economics professor is, "F the other guy before he F's you," is the American way in business. And I think that if you kind of extrapolate a little bit, pull back, you kill the other guy or you take over the other guy, and it's all about eliminating competition. To me, that really seems like the American way in business.
And we have all those examples.
Hmm.
Facebook saw WhatsApp getting big,
Hmm.
so they bought it.
Yeah,
Instagram getting big, so they bought it
right.
to produce. Uh, Mike Powell, when he was chair of the RFCC,
Hmm.
said, you realize there's no law in the United States against monopoly.
Hmm.
And what he believed is that you not merely had to show the market power, but to show they were abusing it,
Hmm.
using it unfairly, which was almost impossible to show in most cases.
Hmm.
His successor, Kevin Martin, and I knew both these guys, had a mantra. There's no competition if there aren't competitors.
Hmm.
So with Google having 90% of the search market, they control it.
Yeah. Hmm.
With Facebook plus TikTok having 90% of the social media market, they control it. So it's a matter of what is the law, what's going on.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say that we're just about at the halfway point. If you just want to, wrap up this piece of this segment.
I'm going to come back with a new paper that I'm sure nobody in the audience is aware of, partly because it was very obscure and partly because it just came out 3 days ago. But it's really frightening because the implication of that paper is that an AI determining market strategy for one company can recreate an effective cartel, make it like a monopoly.
Wow.
That's it.
Okay. Stay tuned, folks. Got some interesting news coming up after the break. You're listening to Community and Technology with Dave Bernstein and Stu Reed on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. We'll be right back after a brief musical break. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back. Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reed on WHCR 90.3 FM. Before the break, Dave, we were talking about anti-competitive behavior among the giants. We're talking about monopolies and market power. And I think you have some info where you're bringing AI into that conversation.
There was a paper that just came out from a couple of Harvard professors, and I forget who the third was, saying that if you tell your AI, figure out a marketing strategy, it will probably find a way to raise prices and by creating an understanding with the competition that the computer doesn't talk to or communicate. To see whether this is practical, let me start by asking you a question.
Mhm.
Do you think that the large language models, either today or in the near future, are able to work about as well as the marketing department of a big company like Verizon and the phone company? How close do you think we are?
Personally, I don't think it's that close. I don't really know, Dave. I don't have any hard data. I do know that the large models are, for the most part, taking in data that they see and activities that are going on and synthesizing and spitting that back up. So, that they could identify things that have worked that are working. Yes. That they could think creatively about outside the box solutions, I'd be skeptical. I would say no.
And I could come up with a dozen examples where the large language models are darn close to the ability of the people. We're taping this Tuesday. You're going to hear it Wednesday. And this evening, I'm going to listen to Terence Tao, field medalist, one of the most respected mathematicians in the world, talk about not whether you can do something like reasoning in a large language model, but how and how effective it is using Google's new O1 software. And he's going to be very impressed. Effective in doing something much harder than a marketing plan. The most complicated mathematics. So I'm not saying computers are smarter than we are now, or even that that's going to happen soon. But in a lot of ways, they can do fairly well. Now, how do Comcast and Verizon manage to have some of the highest prices in the world without meeting in the back room of an airport motel?
Well,
And
Dave, you've explained to me and our audience about how they do what you call signaling, where one company comes out and announces, "Oh, okay, we're not going to spend as much on infrastructure this year. We're going to focus on marketing," which means they're going to raise prices and go after market share. And then the other company, a couple of weeks later, mimics it and says, "Okay, that's what that guy is doing. That's what we're going to do." So they go back and forth and not talking to each other, but talking to the market, maybe talking to Wall Street and laying out their plans. And, by doing that, the so-called competition is able to figure out, okay, how to work with that to maximize the gain for everybody. So,
for everybody, only for the
I mean, for
company.
for the two involved, for the two or three involved, for that everybody. Yeah, I stand corrected.
That's the way it's really worked in telecom that I've tracked for the last 25 years.
Mhm.
They signal each other. Comcast raises prices, Verizon raises prices. If Sprint wants to lower prices because they need market share, Verizon comes back and makes it so painful for Sprint to do that by matching Sprint's lower prices and even going lower, that Sprint backs away. These are that's something that happened. It's pretty clear. The bit that's bringing it into the news is that paper just came out a few days ago saying that the large language models in a test case, not in a real world situation, can do just the same as the giant companies do. Figure out how to raise prices in collaboration with your competition and don't have to communicate with the competition to make that happen. Stu, you got any idea how that works?
We see it all the time. Some folks call it cartels. Uh, Now, how it works in AI, I don't know. I would guess they will mimic the behavior that they see out in the marketplace. You talked about one company signaling to the market what they're doing, the other company mimicking or figuring out how to work in a complementary way so that they're not hurt in the market, and so that everybody, or not everybody, but the two parties both win and are able to go about raising prices, as an example, together, because one company is going to raise prices, so the other company can too. So there's not going to be a price war. So, I'm thinking the AI model, looks at the way people do that and mimics it. Is that how it works?
And some Harvard professors just put some AI models to the test and discovered they do just that.
Mhm.
That if Verizon, for example, put an AI model in charge of its marketing without having any direct communication with Comcast or Charter, the Verizon model sees what Comcast and Charter are doing in the market.
Mhm.
And based on what it sees, it comes up with a new strategy to get higher prices or more profitable, which is what they always want. And as this Comcast hands it over, just like that, to the models, Comcast will look at how Verizon responded to them. And if Verizon hadn't raised the prices when Comcast was, they'd look at it and say, we can't raise the prices anymore. So by looking at what your competitors actually doing or saying they're going to do, you often do this with speeches on Wall Street, an AI model can well, I shouldn't say almost definitely, we don't have any real examples, but can drive up prices in a way that until this, I hadn't heard of anybody suggesting. And it's really scary because the AI models are close enough to do this kind of thing, and they probably are going to do that all around.
But Dave, are they going to actually be better? Are they going to outperform humans doing the same thing, or it just means we don't have to incur the cost of those high-priced VPs figuring that stuff out?
Well, what do you think?
I suspect I suspect that it's going to be a significant cost savings. Um, they don't have to have as many high price VPs figuring that stuff out. And they can always have somebody who's sitting on top of the AI who is looking at their decisions and their recommendations and tweaking and directing where the AI goes. So I'm thinking it's going to be an enhancement rather than a replacement of marketing operations in these big companies. But I don't really know. That just is my supposition.
That's one of the biggest debates inside the AI industry. Can AI do it all themselves? Or is it better to use AI if you're a doctor to help you,
Mhm.
your assistant. And the official word on everybody in medicine is that today, not a few years ago, is that you're not going to replace doctors, except in places they don't have any doctors, which is an important application because there's a lot of countries that don't have any doctors to read mammographies, for example. But instead, we'll make people more efficient. Will it play out that way? I don't know. Are the AIs today smart enough to replace people? And the answer is, in many cases, yes, and but in most cases, no.
Mhm. It sounds to me, Dave, I'm just kind of reading between the lines of this breakthrough that you're talking about. It sounds to me like, AI is learning how to be cunning and in their strategic thinking. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Where is the breakthrough in this AI that you're talking about?
Well, if you ask anybody at OpenAI, and now at a couple of Chinese companies that have done the same, like DeepSeek, they'll tell you, yes, our software can reason. And I can't argue back and forth because nobody really just defined what it means by reasoning. So I don't know whether they can. I do know they can come to an awful lot of decisions, as in how to solve a hard mathematics problem, how to read a mammography, how to find a way to persuade your competition to work with you to raise prices.
Mhm.
Now, let's take that to another thing. Daniel Arthur, a professor, I think at Harvard, uh, is just did a presentation saying that actually the AI that can help and maybe replace people is going to be good for low skilled workers, the middle class. He didn't say it's going to be. He said it could be, and he's recommended some policy steps to make that so. Can you see that happening? That the lower and the middle level of corporations will be helped by the AI?
I see maybe the corporate bottom line being helped. I don't see the people, the workers being helped. Uh,
They're different.
I don't know if he's talking about giving the workers some tools to help with their productivity. My sense, just knowing how, the corporate think, is they're thinking about eliminating and cost reduction all the time. So if there's a way to eliminate employees and employee costs with AI, that's the first thing they're going to do.
And he said it doesn't have to be that way, although I agree with you about how it's probably going to play out. He said that taking somebody who is, say, a high school graduate, doesn't have the experience and the ability of a college graduate,
Mhm.
and by giving that somebody enough help to deal with complicated situations, that will allow people who are now unskilled labor to take on some of the skilled jobs that need judgment. Will that happen? That's a dream for
Yeah,
him.
that sounds pie in the sky to me, Dave. I mean, that'd be great. If that can't happen, I said let's build it into the schools. Let's build it into the education system. Let's make some, after school career enhancement stuff using AI to give folks these skills. I don't see corporations being that beneficent. I'm gonna call me a cynic, but I just don't see corporations spending the time or resources on that. But outside, on the educational sphere, perhaps that could happen.
Eric, and I can't pronounce it, it's something like Brynjolfsson, who is at Stanford,
Hmm.
came to a similar conclusion. He said there are two logical paths for what happens with AI. One of them is it's going to knock out a whole lot of jobs and replace a whole lot of people.
Mhm.
The other is that actually it's going to help most people by giving them the tools to do a better job and ultimately more likely to keep the job and be paid better because they're more productive. And he says the society should make the decision which way we go.
Mhm.
And I know what I want if we have to make that decision. I know what he wants. I don't know how it's going to happen.
Mhm. It's interesting, Dave, when we were much younger, some decades back, and computers were a new thing, folks are saying that computers were going to replace people in the workforce. And in fact, I think, to your hypothesis, I think computers have helped make folks a lot more productive. They become a real tool for both employees as well as entrepreneurs and folks that work on their own. So they've been an incredible enhancement to productivity and to making stuff happen and getting stuff done.
Oh, I'm not going to do it now, but have me come back to whether they really was such an enhancement and the solo paradox when we can prepare it a little bit better.
Okay.
Ask the question: How? What is the unemployment rate today compared to what it was, say, before computers came in
Oh,
and
it's no better. I don't know the numbers, but it's no better. But it's no better. I mean, but to me, that does not have anything to do with individual productivity as much as it has to do with corporate bottom lines and the fact that the system is set up, and you study economics more than I have, but the system is set up so there has to be an underclass and an unemployed segment of the population in order for the system to keep moving forward. So, I don't see the unemployment rate moving in any positive direction because of increased productivity or computer enhancements or even AI. I mean, I think there has to be a much more fundamental reworking of the economic systems and of corporate behavior before that happens.
really surprising that coming from some of the richest people in the world, literally including Elon Musk, they think they're involved with the AI. They think it's going to make an enormous difference and that it will eliminate jobs for a lot of people. It will eliminate jobs for a lot of individuals, but on balance, there's lots of other ways to determine the level of jobs, uh, federal federal government deficits, and so on, that it can be alleviated, and it has. The unemployment rate today, measured the same way, which is not an accurate measurement, but measured the same way, is lower than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago.
Yeah, but what is it, Dave? It's not an insignificant number. I don't know the number, but it's not insignificant, is it? Is it
Uh,
is it
no,
half of what it used to be?
about 4%.
4%.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the number is probably about twice that. Because if you've given up,
Yeah, you're not counting.
yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, and there's a lot of people who have little choice but to give up.
Hmm.
Uh, Try getting a job if you have a felony conviction.
Right.
And a lot of people. So some of the richest people in the world have said the right thing to do is to have a guaranteed basic income
Yeah.
for everybody. It,
We've talked about that, Dave. You know where I stand on that. I agree with that. AI aside, I think that's something that would really just help build the whole fabric of the nation if folks had a safety net, if you will, an undergirdment that was there for them to land on so that they are not out there just scurrying every day just to stay alive. When you're in that kind of mode, You don't make good decisions. You take risks that are not, in your best interest, and you're not able to be creative and explore perhaps new ways of providing for yourself, new ways of growing, new ways of generating an income, because you're so busy just trying to survive and stay alive and pay the rent and eat. So UBI, universal or unconditional basic income, gives that floor to folks so that they have the breathing room to make more reasoned decisions, to find career paths and entrepreneurial paths and other growth paths that work for them, that are really aligned with their core interests and their core loves, as opposed to just trying to survive. So UBI is something that, I would love to see happen. It may be a pipe dream, but I'd love to see it happen.
As I say, surprising people who agree with you are
Mhm.
many of the billionaires in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
But
Uh,
billionaires in Silicon Valley have no idea what they're talking about in some things.
Tell me about it. Okay, we just got a couple minutes, Dave. Yeah, you want to wrap up? You're talking. We're talking about AI and the future of society and where it might go. It's still got a long way to go. I saw a story about Chat GTP search results for news where they're coming with all kind of inaccurate answers to stories. So I don't know if you saw that story. The story in Verge about where GPT was asked to identify the source of 200 quotes from 20 publications, and they got 153 wrong. I mean, just incredible error rate. And they, push back the answers with all kinds of confidence and don't even qualify. This might not be right.
That's an exception. For most things, it wouldn't be close to that high.
Mhm.
Although a Berkeley or Stanford professor is could lose his tenure, an expert on lying testified in a case in the Midwest that all these studies have shown that lies can be detected and defeated. And he referenced two studies that didn't exist because he took it from ChatGPT. They still
Mhm.
make errors
Wow.
called hallucinations. Now, I've seen in the last 3 to 6 months that the rate of hallucinations has gone down probably by half in the software I use. I don't know. That ChatGPT once upon a time said that David Burstein had written 2 books and was a documentary filmmaker in Los Angeles. And I have written 2 books, but I'm not a documentary filmmaker. That's Jenny. Uh, and I'm not in Los Angeles. So, thing you have to know is that AIs are getting better and better, and in some things are darn good, but still make errors. Now, let me give you a teaser of what we're going to do in this show in a little while. I have a list of which software you should use if you go into AI, including if Stu was persuaded that he needed to write a speech. What software would he use? And I will bring that with several different things, drawing, video, and so on. Practical advice on how to choose what the choices are out there. And we'll bring it to another show, probably not next week. I think we have a guest. Uh, so Stu is now, I should announce this, president-elect of the New York chapter of the Internet Society. He doesn't officially take over until the 22nd of this month, but since nobody ran against him, pretty sure he's going to be elected.
How about that? Chances look pretty good, aren't they? Well, we have talked a little bit on the air about the Internet Society, and we're hoping to really turn a page and reinvigorate the society with a lot of new activities and stuff, and we'll be bringing some of that to the air here on WACR. But we got to wrap it up here, Dave. You got any final comments?
Well, one thing, since mentioned the Internet Society, we're looking for interns and even probably will have one part-time job
Mhm.
do the outreach and to coordinate things like that in the Internet Society. Catch either Stu or me if that's something you're interested. If you're a city college student who wants to do an internship, our people can teach you a lot.
Okay. And you can reach me, Stu Reed, at Stu Reed, STUREID at live.com if you're so inclined. Thanks for listening. This has been Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reed on WACR 90.3 FM and on the web at WHCR.org. Tune in every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.